Live, co-hosted by Rafael Geller. Ari Louis will not be in the studio today, guys. He is out doing a play. So if you're in the Jerusalem area, check out his play. It's playing at the ACI, which is off Pierre Koenig in Talpiot area. So we're going to miss Ari in the studio. In fact, Ari's not going to be with us for the next 7 out of 11 shows. So it's going to be me, Rafael, with you guys. We have a great show today. We're going to start off with a great guest from ESPN Chicago, Scott Powers. A lot of great stuff to talk about in sports in Chicago, but of course we got to touch up on the Bulls. So much stuff happened this year, and especially in the postseason. Derrick Rose, Noah going out. There's a lot of questions on if Noah's going to participate in the Olympics this summer for France because they have had a great team in the Euro, in the Euro Championship last year. So a lot of great stuff to get to. We are going to be calling Scott right now, and it's going to be great to get some input from a media person from Chicago, see how the fans in Chicago have reacted to losing their star in Game 1 in that series. Philadelphia right now is playing pretty well, down 2-1 to the Boston Celtics, but it's going to be a very interesting series there. Here at Louis Live, we predicted that the Celtics will probably advance in 6, but you never know. You never know if these 76ers are a very, very young team, and time will tell. So we're going to call our first guest right now, Scott Powers from ESPN. Hello, am I speaking with Scott Powers?
This is Scott.
Scott, welcome to Louis Live, and great to have you on. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us. There's a lot
no problem.
A lot of great stuff to talk about. And the first question I want to ask you, we got to touch up on the Bulls. We have a lot of great Bulls, dedicated Bulls fans here in Israel that have been tuning in at 2, 3 in the morning to watch the Bulls. And unfortunately for them, there hasn't been much to watch. So I want to start off with that Game 1 injury to star at former MVP or last year's MVP, Derrick Rose. What kind of reaction was there? I'm sure you were watching the game with fans or at work with all your ESPN colleagues. What kind of reaction was there when Derrick Rose goes down and you can tell it's a serious injury?
Yeah, it was actually covering the game that day, and I was back in the press room already, and the Bulls it seemed like they had the game secured, and it was kind of already worked on stories, and all of a sudden you look up at the screen and Rose goes up and he goes down, and it was kind of disbelief, I think. I think the game, Bulls were up by 10, 12 points at that point, and it seemed like the game wasn't a lock, and he's down with an injury and looks really serious. I think there was just that kind of shock and disbelief right away, and the reality of it hit pretty quickly that day. Within an hour they had said they had torn his ACL, and it meant the end of this season, and it meant much of the next season. So it happened so quickly, and the Bulls season, kind of all these hopes and these aspirations of maybe contending for the title this year, at least making a run, kind of ended prematurely, and it was the city was kind of devastated there for a bit.
Right, and I mean, it was very sad because, of course, Derrick Rose struggled with all those injuries all year. I think he missed 25-plus games, but the team played well with him and was able to be the number 1 seed without him for, like I said, over 25 games. Noah was playing great. Rip Hamilton also was injured a lot of the year, so there are a lot of injuries, but the Bulls were still able to pick up that number 1 seed. The next thing that kind of was a big deal, I guess, in Chicago was Noah going down with that injury. Just when Bulls fans thought that things couldn't get worse, the guy who is the heart and soul of the Bulls team, and probably their best big man, maybe besides Boozer, but he's their most tenacious guy down low, goes down. So when that happened, did people in Chicago still have faith that this team could win minus their 2 stars?
I think there was some faith. I mean, the 76ers, they're a mediocre team. They're pretty average. I don't think they really put much scare in anyone. So I think the thought was that with Noah, they thought the Bulls could maybe still win that series without him. All of a sudden you take away Rose, you take away Noah, and those complementary pieces are they're alone. They need to. I don't know. It seemed like there was some hope, but at the same time, it was. I think even past the first round, I don't think there was much not much hope for after the first round. I mean, just without Noah and without Rose, and then Noah's ankle injury was pretty severe. So, it was one of those things where, like, wow, how did this happen? It was after Rose, you had this devastation, and then all of a sudden you had Noah go down too, and for an entire season, you play without Rose, and you think maybe they can get somewhere without him, and then you have Noah go down, and I guess it just kind of the reality hit. It was whatever the Bulls had thought they could do this year really wasn't realistic anymore.
Right, and it's just it's just sad when a team works so hard all year, they're the number one seed, and injuries just ruin it. I mean, it's one thing if they got upset by the 76ers when they're playing when the Bulls are healthy and they're playing their full squad, but I mean, I don't know, it's just a very frustrating thing. I know we've had a lot of fans in Israel, as I mentioned, stay up late to watch those games and just be disappointed sometimes by the effort of the Bulls team, even when Noah was in there, because they didn't really play well then as well. Another thing I really want to talk about with you, Scott, is something that I think should get more media attention, and I'm going to be very happy to talk about with you, is John Lucas was kind of this year's Jeremy Lin, and for some odd reason, he didn't get much press about. He didn't get much attention in the United States media for being this kind of unsung hero who, when Derrick Rose was out, played really well. So could you tell us your thoughts on John Lucas really going from a guy who hasn't really played that much in his career to really having a huge role with the Bulls this season?
It was weird because his role varied so much. I mean, there were games where he had some spectacular games. I think they were against the Heat. The one game he had 20-plus points, and it was kind of responsible for them winning. And when Rose was there, that he probably didn't play. It was such a strange back and forth role where he's one of those kind of guys where he gets hot, he can really go off. But when he's not playing, and there's those days where he's not playing. So on days, I guess I can see the comparison to Lin, but it wasn't consistent enough. Where he had some big games, but there were games where he played. He was, he had a factor, but wasn't much of a factor. So it was a neat story where you see this guy who, like you said, when Derrick Rose is on the court, that he may not even get off the bench for the entire time. And then there are games where Rose is hurt and he's back on C.J. Watts, and all of a sudden he comes off off the bench. And I don't think he started a game this year. And he comes off the bench and kind of gives him some offensive spark. So it's nice. He's an undersized guard, and he obviously he loves to shoot, and he's a fun personality. So I think that was fun for Bulls fans to see, just kind of this underachiever, playing so well, and at times, even having a kind of deciding the outcome of a couple of games. So I think in Chicago, a lot of people embrace John Lucas for that, where they loved his kind of tenacious personality, and then also just kind of the way that he played when he got in the game.
Right, yeah, and that's a great point. You're right. There were some games where he wasn't a factor, but there also were some. So it was a very weird season for him, and of course he was on that Oklahoma State team that did really well a few years ago. But really, this team losing first round, a lot of Chicago fans must be really upset, thinking, Derrick Rose is healthy, he's back for the playoffs. He goes down in the first game, and I don't know what's next. What's Tom Thibodeau going to say in the locker room? How do you get these guys ready to come back next year? Of course, they announced yesterday in the news that Derrick Rose will probably be out 8 to 12 months. He had the surgery this past weekend, so Derrick Rose essentially could miss the first chunk of the season, if not until the playoffs. So what does Coach Thibodeau do to motivate the players and get them ready for next year and say, next year let's be the number one seed again?
And I don't know if the focus will be on the number one seed. I think they'll shoot for that, but I think the key next year is just kind of staying afloat. And I think without Rose, you're not really a contender. He's never going to say that to them, but when he's not out there, the Bulls aren't going to be able to compete with the Heat or even probably the Celtics, or right now even the 76ers. So I think the key is you're looking for those guys to develop some new roles, and you saw some deficiencies this year when Rose wasn't on the court. So I think you want to fix some of those things. And I think the Bulls may do a couple moves in the offseason. I don't know if there's anything huge. People have talked about the amnesty rule with with Boozer, but I don't. It doesn't sound like they're going to do anything with him. But I think you need to get more out of some of those other pieces, and then what you hope is 8 to 12 months. It sounds like Rose could be back, but even then, it doesn't sound like he'd be his old self until after that. So I think what you hope is that Bulls get in the playoffs, and then if you can get Rose back, and he's somewhat of a factor, and then you make another run. But I think a lot of people have also kind of resigned next season, where next season could be one of those rough years, and hopefully you're shooting for 2 years from now where maybe you make another run of the title. So I think the Bulls have enough pieces where they can compete. Without Rose, with them, I think they're a contender. But it also depends on where his health's going to be. So next season may be a wash, and then you hopefully shoot for that following year to make another run.
Scotty, you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Okay, I think we lost you there.
Yeah.
I was talking about Carlos Boozer. I just want to get your thoughts on Carlos, and do you think this is a guy that D Rose wants to build his or the Bulls management wants to build, their future around? Because this guy seems to struggle sometimes in crucial points of the game.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think you see that where he's a guy that there are a lot of heavy expectations placed on him based on what they paid him, in the off season. A guy that they thought was going to be kind of that secondary piece to Rose, and he's really disappeared at times of the season, and even in the final game there they lost. It was bad. The Bulls were better off with him on the bench, so I think that kind of speaks to what he down the line he just isn't a factor. So at times he looks like the guy that you get you get a 20-10, but he's not a banger. He doesn't really go that hard inside. He prefers to kind of shoot that baseline jumper, and I'm not sure what the Bulls thought this is what they were getting. He averaged 15 and 8 this season, and that's not really what you hope for. You're hoping for something more than that, and especially those are numbers considering what Rose was on the floor. A lot of the time you thought he'd step up this play. So it sounds like just from listening to the GM and what they're going to do, it sounds like Boozer's going to be in their future. So. I don't know if you're going to get anything more from him or if his role is going to change, but yeah, he's certainly kind of been a disappointment so far.
Right, and that's a great point you made. When in Utah, he was really known for being that guy who could pull up and make the shot, where in Chicago he kind of came in and was expected to be more of a big man, and that's kind of more of what he did in his time with Cleveland. So when he went to Utah, he really focused more on his shooting. All the big men on that Utah team, the Turkish guy, I'm blanking on his name right now, but were very great shooters. And Jerry Sloan liked getting those guys who are big and could shoot from outside, kind of like a Dirk Nowitzki type. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with the Bulls next year, what kind of game they have. Last question on the Bulls before we move on for about 5 minutes of baseball, then we'll let you go. I want you to talk about the development of Omer Asik from Turkey, who's really, in my opinion, one of those unsung heroes in all the NBA. Forget the Bulls. We've seen him play here in Israel because he's from Turkey, so he played in Turkey before. And we really like him in Israel, and we think he represents European basketball very well. He always hustles, always trying to get the ball, never gives up on a play. That's something that in Europe we really value in our players. So what do Bulls fans see in him when he comes on the court?
I think he's another guy they appreciate his work ethic, and there are games kind of like Lucas where he's a non-factor, and there are other games where if someone gets in foul trouble, he'll see 15 to 20 minutes. He's always been a role player, but when he comes in, he obviously plays hard, and I think even down the playoff stretch there, last few games, because Noah being out there, he saw some extended minutes, and especially in the final game, he was really a factor. It's unfortunate you just kind of put him in a situation in the last play where it comes down to him being passed the ball and going to the free throw line where he's been pretty average throughout his career. But I think you can see blocks and shots. He got to the rim and he made some plays where you probably didn't anticipate he would. One of the late baskets, he did a pick and roll, and he got to the basket, he caught the ball and dunked it, and it was just kind of this play where you felt like things were just kind of lining up for the Bulls to win there. But and the Bulls fans appreciate what he does. He comes in there and he plays hard from the get go, and he's able to contribute a few blocks, rebounds, a few points, and I think the Bulls have an option. He's a restricted free agent this year, so it sounds like as long as some other team doesn't make some crazy offer from him, they're going to keep him. So I think he's another complementary piece. You know, when I think when you're building a title team, that you have those big pieces like Derrick Rose, and then you have the smaller pieces, and Omer's one of them, and he definitely kind of fills what the Bulls need off the bench in the front court.
Right, and you mentioned, which I kind of chuckled to myself when you said if some team doesn't offer him a crazy contract, and that seems to be very common. Common these days, where a guy who has one average year, then a great example, in my opinion, is a guy like DeAndre Jordan, who Golden State tried to sign. He's really, he's a guy who has a lot of potential, but really doesn't put up that big of numbers. Golden State tried to sign him. Then the Clippers want him so badly they matched the offer, but it's for something like was a $55 million contract, and he's definitely not worth that.
Yeah.
But we have about 5 minutes left, so we want to focus now on Chicago baseball. We have a lot of White Sox fans in Israel, believe it, more than Cubs. So we want to talk about Adam Dunn, who made that prediction last August. He said, "Mark my words, I will come back from this horrible year, and I will have a great year next year." And let's give him credit: 12 home runs, 20 RBIs. Of course, his average is down, but that's Adam Dunn. That's not surprising. But he's hitting home runs and he's hitting RBIs, so he was right. So what do you think? What changed in his game from last year, where he only had 11 home runs the whole season?
Yeah, he doesn't think a whole lot's changed. He feels like his mentality is the same, and it sounds like he's put last year behind him, and then he felt like last year was just kind of this fluke, and his average and what he's done throughout his career was going to come back. So he says he's seeing the ball better, and he's just going out there and hitting. And he's kind of he's never been one that's really been about mechanics and having going up there worrying about I'm doing this at the plate or that at the plate. So. I think some early confidence probably helped too. He got off to a good start and he's kind of continued it, and it's strange. He's got more home runs this season than he had all of last year. So, you really have to credit that he came back, and something like that can be really crippling for a player, even more than one season. And he's got back to where he's taking pitches, he's walking at a high level again. You're going to take when he's walking, when he's striking out a lot, it's usually when Dunn's at his best. He's seeing a lot of pitches, and he's being very, very, very careful what he's swinging at, and times he's going to miss and he's going to strike out, and he'll probably still lead the league. That's what he's done throughout his career. But the opposite side of that is that he's going to maybe hit 30, 40 home runs and drive in 100. So I think that's what the Sox are hoping. He's going to strike at a high level, walk at a high level, and then produce at a high level. So, it's been a neat story around here where last year was it kind of agonized White Sox fans, and this year it's been such a pleasant surprise. I think the whole team as a whole. You have Jake Peavy too, who was he's battled from all these injuries, and he really hasn't been the type of guy the Sox thought that he would be when they traded him for. But he's had an outstanding season when he's been one of the top pitchers in the American League, and so the Sox are still kind of struggling here and there, but they have some pieces where I think there's hope, and that division's kind of really hasn't worked itself out where people thought the Tigers were going to run away with it, and Indians are in first place, and White Sox are still competitive, so I think there's some optimism on the South side so far.
Right, and as you mentioned, Cleveland has some great pitching, in my opinion. If Jimenez can go back to his form from that year in Colorado, and Derek Lowe is always going to be a great pitcher, and Justin Masterson. So they have great pieces there. The offense is a little shaky, but as you mentioned, the Tigers have really not lived up to expectations. Justin Verlander is doing his thing, but no one else on that pitching staff is really pitching that well. So you never know. The White Sox, of course, have a new manager this year after Ozzie leaves for Florida, and I bet that was my next question for you. Are White Sox fans happy he's gone? I mean, they won that World Series in 2005, and it was a big deal for a White Sox fan, but he caused a lot of controversy after that. So are you guys happy, or not you guys, but White Sox fans happy to have a new, kind of a fresh start?
Yeah, I think I think people got sick of Ozzie toward the end, and if they're not winning, I think it really kind of takes to people. It's different, Robin Ventura is really quiet, doesn't say a whole lot. Has definitely stayed away from controversy. People ask him what he thought about the Cubs and Wrigley Field, and he was very nice about it. And Ozzie never held back his opinion, and his dislike for Wrigley Field. So it's different. You know, I think on both sides. You know, you had Lou Piniella as the Cubs manager. You know, just a couple of years ago, and then you had Ozzie, and now you got two managers just in a few years that are, you know, newer to managing and less talkative and less controversial. So I think Chicago's kind of had a swing in that, and you know, it's definitely different. So you know, I think as long as they're winning, you know, the Sox fans are gonna, they don't care who's managing. I think Ozzie always made it entertaining for the media, and that's been different with Ventura, but. And ultimately, it comes down to results. And you know, Ozzie's teams have kind of struggled the last couple of years, and you know, him and Ken Williams, the general manager, just I don't think they saw eye to eye at all times. So it's sort of time for Ozzie to move on, and the Sox to move on in the other direction as well.
Right, and Scott, we're going to let you go on this. The Cubs were huge fans of Theo Epstein here in Israel. Of course, he's Jewish, and probably the best Jewish GM in all sports. Winning those 2 titles with the Red Sox. So we want to ask you, the Cubs are struggling. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Theo said it would take some time, gave him some patience, and, you know, he has credit to say that. But what are you looking forward to for the Cubs in, let's say, 3 years down the road? Castro will be older. They'll have, hopefully a better pitching staff. That's kind of been a problem there. But what do you think Theo Epstein is going to do to build up this ball club?
Well, what you kind of hope is that, you know, they're going to, go to the draft and start getting some prospects that the Cubs have kind of failed to do. And then also part of it's just, I think, a different mentality. You know, the Cubs have been kind of aggressive to the plate and really not, worried about on-base percentage and walks. And I think some of that, you know, some of the philosophies you hope Epstein kind of instills from Class A to the majors now. And some of those players start having that mentality at the plate and you see a different approach there. You know, I think in 3 years, I'm not sure if you're near competing yet, but I think you're a lot closer. I think people are kind of understand this is a process, and I think year 3, you're hoping to get closer, but I'm not sure if it's there yet. But I think just kind of steadiness. You like to see some, the Cubs start getting some pieces where you feel like these guys are, if they get these guys, they're moving in the right direction. So I think you see kind of piece by piece, and like you talked about Castro. Castro's kind of one of those first pieces, and I think there's a couple other guys on the team that could be there, but they're for the most part you got a team there. I don't think in 3 years you'll see a lot of those players there. So I think Cubs fans understand it's a process, but I think year 3, year 4, that's when they'll start becoming a little bit more antsy and see some success.
Right, you know what? I'm a Blue Jay fan, so I don't have much hate towards the Cubs, so I do kind of wish that they win that World Series, because it's just starting to get to the point where, why not? For a long time, I lived in New England for a year when they were going through that patch of not winning, and I actually was there when they won. And at this point, it's just, I feel bad for those old-time Cub fans that are 80, 90 years old. They deserve a championship. So we'll be rooting for the Cubs. Scott, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Israel Sports Radio and Louis Live. Have a great day out there in Chicago.
You too, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So that was Scott Powers from ESPN Chicago. It was great to have him on. We're going to go to about a 4-minute commercial break. We're going to come back with Ari Bluestein, who's our Philadelphia insider. We're going to talk some MLB with him. A lot of funny and interesting stories. So stay with us. We'll be back in 4 minutes.
IsraelSportsRadio.com. Body and Soul Gym in the heart of Talpiot. Great machines, excellent staff, and wonderful classes such as Pilates, yoga, and kickboxing. Give them a call at 02-678-8861. Once again, that's 02-678-8861. www.body-soul.co.il. Once again, that's www.body-soul.co.il. That's Body and Soul in the heart of Talpiot, which is great for your body and your soul.
You're already using a credit card every day. Why not feel good every time you make a purchase? When using the HAS Advantage Support Israel Visa card, a percentage of each purchase you make will be donated to your choice of 24 Israeli-based charities, while still earning a reward point for every dollar spent. But wait, these rewards are even better than the standard rewards you get, especially when using them towards Israel travel, with the best conversion rate on El Al's Matmeed frequent flyer program. Earn double points at some of your favorite supermarkets and restaurants in the U.S., as well as discounts all over Israel. If you love traveling and supporting Israel, HAS Advantage is the card for you. Just give us a call toll-free at 1-866-6-ISRAEL. Sign up right now with the code ISR10 to earn 2,500 bonus points. That's 1-866-647-7235. HAS Advantage. Earn rewards. Support Israel. Offer valid for U.S. citizens only. Terms and conditions do apply. When dialing from within Israel, please dial 1-800-200-818.
Israel Sports Dynamics specializes in football consulting, equipment, uniforms, and more. Great brands such as Nike, Russell Athletics, Shutt Sports Products, and many more. Just one call away. With over 30 years coaching experience with university and professional athletes, Harry Hill, owner of ISD, can advise you for all your sports needs. Call 054-581-3248. That's 054-581-3248, or visit our website at www.isdisrael.com. If that's not easy enough, click on the ISD banner on the Israel Sports Radio website and be part of the game.
Are you tired of paying for expensive gym memberships that you don't use? Are you frustrated by not seeing results? It's time for the X1. Israel Gym Systems is proud to launch the X1 suspension and bodyweight training system. Lose weight, build muscle, improve balance, coordination, and flexibility. With your purchase of the X1, you'll receive a free membership to IsraelGym.com and access to our archives of videos and exercise plans. Sign up today at www.israelgym.com and get ready for the new you. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
All right, we're back on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. This is Louis Live, hosted by Raphael Geller. We're having a great show today. We just started off with Scott Powers from ESPN. We are going to now talk a lot of MLB for the next segment with our great friend Ari Bluestein he's our Philadelphia insider. He works for Drexel Basketball. He does a lot of college basketball with us, but we are going to have him on for baseball, and it's always great to have him on. We have him on once a week, so we are going to dial him up right now. And there's a lot of good stuff to talk about. The really funny story of Steven Strasburg about him with Icy Hot. We're going to talk to him about that. We're going to talk about his Phillies really struggling right now. Really having problems there. Florida coming back. The Mets. I mean, the AL East. My boy Brett Lowry from the Blue Jays doing something really stupid. We're going to get his thoughts on that. In fact, we're probably going to talk to him about that first because I'd love to hear his reaction. But we are going to be dialing him up right now. And it's been one of those weird weeks in baseball. There's been a lot of weird stories. Not necessarily great milestones. Last week we had Josh Hamilton with that 4-home-run game, but it's been very interesting, and we're hoping to get Ari on the line here. Hi, am I speaking with Ari?
Yes, this is Ari.
Hey, Ari, it's Raphael from Israel Sports Radio. You're on right now on Louis Live. How you doing, Ari?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm great. The show Ari today is busy right now, so the show is being hosted by me. So you're going to hear a lot of Blue Jay questions. I'm sorry, Ari, but that's the way it is. You know what I'm going to start with. There's a lot of great, funny stories I was telling our listeners. Not necessarily a milestone week in baseball, where like last week when we had a Hamilton who had that nuts week, but a lot of weird stories. And the first one I want to start with is Brett Lowry, of course, throwing his helmet at the umpire Frank Miller, I believe, and this has gotten a lot of media attention. As a Blue Jay fan, I'm happy we can get media attention through something. Our team right now is not doing so well, but it's okay. He just got suspended 4 days. He's told the media he didn't mean to hit him. I believe that he didn't mean to hit him. I don't know why you would want to hit him. It was a horrible call on both pitches, but what were your thoughts on that, Ari?
I think, obviously, he didn't mean to do it on purpose. I mean, that's obvious. You never want to throw a helmet blatantly at an umpire. You know that's a big no-no. If you don't like the call, the thing you're going to do is you're going to get up in the umpire's face and yell and scream, maybe give him a little chest bump if you want to really show the umpire up, but you would never want to throw any type of equipment at an umpire. So it did happen, though, and they had to suspend him because you can't set the precedent well to say, oh, I threw my helmet at the umpire. Oh, I didn't mean to. I did it by accident. Okay, then you're forgiven. They have to suspend them because you can't allow for excuses if that does happen. And I'm sorry to hear that this is the only way Toronto can get publicity right now. They did get a win last night, though.
We did.
Kyle Driebeck, the former Philly
boy.
farm hand. They got a little Philly thing in there. He was involved in that Roy Halladay trade. I know he's like 3-4 this year, but his ERA is not bad. Could be a nice pitcher for you guys.
Right. No, he's as you mentioned. A lot of our pitchers have very low ERAs, but their winning percentages are not good. Except Ricky Romario is having a great year. Was an All-Star last year, an alternate. But yeah, I mean that was very interesting to see because I was watching Around the Horn last night, and how often do you have all the panelists talking about the Blue Jays? I mean, it never happens. We had Dan Schulman on the show earlier this week, and we were talking about how the Blue Jays had a national game on a couple of Mondays ago, a 7 p.m. national game against the Rangers. Yu Darvish was pitching. It was in Toronto, and that's that happens once every couple of years when Toronto are on that Monday night baseball game. So maybe things are starting to pick up for Toronto. Who knows?
I think that was more because of you, Darvish. Sorry to burst your bubble there. But, hey, the AL East, honestly, the AL East is wide open this year. The Red Sox are having a down year. I don't know if they're going to be able to turn it around. You know, the Yankees, strong, but they lose Pineda. Ivan Nova's hurt now. So I think that, and Mariano Rivera, of course, went down. You know, you have the Orioles and Rays at the top of the division. I don't see why the Blue Jays wouldn't be able to compete not only for the division, but for one of the two wild cards, because you have that extra wild card this year.
Right, and I'll tell you from having all my family in Toronto, the expectations right now in Toronto are to make the playoffs. It'll be a very disappointing year if we don't, as you mentioned, with the extra wild card. Really, 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 really good pitching staff this year that no one really knows about. We had someone on from WFAN who was a huge Yankee fan. I was just teasing him, saying my Brandon Morrow last year got you guys for a 17 strikeout, one-hitter game. So there's a lot of talent on this team. The hitting, Lowry, of course, is going to be suspended, or was suspended for 4 games, but we're not going to really miss him that much. He needs to cool out and chill out a bit. I think the reason, I want to hear your thoughts on this, Ari. I think the reasons why the umpire called it an out was because in the pitch before that, he started running towards first base, and this is a second-year player. You can't do that. You don't have that kind of, kind of rep to do that. You have to, by the time he came back, he was almost halfway to first base. So I think the ump just said, that's his punishment. I'm going to call it a strike no matter where it is on the next pitch. So do you agree with me? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, an umpire never wants to be showing up like that, especially from a young player. You know, if that's, Albert Pujols, then that's a little bit of a different story. He's got one of the best eyes in the game. He's obviously the best hitter in the game, although he's not really performing like he is this year, although he did have a home run last night, I believe only a second one of the year. But as an umpire, you do not want to get shown up. That's one thing that you do not want to do. You do not want to have your authority questioned. And when you start to walk towards first base, when the umpire calls it a strike, the umpire feels like is you showing him up. And I played baseball, so I played baseball for years. And anytime, I've only maybe done that one time, and that was when the call was really, really bad. I take like a step towards first base, and then I wait for the signal to go and my base, because I do not want to make the umpire mad, especially if I'm pitching on the mound, which I've done. I'm a pitcher as well. So when you're pitching and hitting in the lineup, you do not want to make the umpire mad. So I think Brett Lawrie just made a wrong decision. And, it's a bad decision for a young player, but I'm sure he'll learn from it.
Right, and yeah, exactly. He's a young guy. It's not he didn't throw his helmet at the ump. It hit the ground and bounced. It wasn't like this is one of those things where Upton hit the ump a couple of years ago when he was in the minor leagues, I believe, and got suspended 50 games, and that was a huge deal. It wasn't anything like that. I hope people don't start, what's the word that people in the media use so much, examining his character or whatever. This isn't something that's worth that. Next, Ari, I want to talk to you about Pujols, which you just mentioned. The Angels has fired their hitting coach. This guy's been there for 12 years. Apparently, I was reading some LA Times stuff this year. Very, very good friend of Sosha. This obviously wasn't done by Mike Sosha. This was done by management. And you can make an argument that it was done because of Pujols. Actually, I'm not even going to make the argument. I'm going to go ahead and say it was done because Pujols is struggling. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with me? Do you think that it was because the whole team is struggling? And then to a second part of this question, Ari, what does Albert Pujols do to get out of this funk? It's now almost 2 months into the season.
Well, the first question about the hitting coach. Hitting coaches come and go. I know he's been there for a while. Mickey Hatcher, I believe his name was, good major league hitter, friend of Mike Sosha's. But if you're not getting along with the $180 million man Albert Pujols, and you are contributing to him slumping, you have to be fired. That's just the bottom line.
Right.
And in my opinion, hitting coaches in the major league are very replaceable. If you don't know how to hit by the major leagues and you don't know how to make adjustments to your swing by the major leagues, then you're never going to hit. The hitting coaches come in handy in college and in the minor leagues when you're making the adjustments to your swing. If you get to the big show, you're having a problem, you should be able to make the adjustments. So I don't really think it's going to affect the team. And in the first night that the new hitting coach was there, Albert Pujols hit a 3-run bomb that led to the Angels' win. Guess what? I think it was the right move. You have to cater to Albert Pujols. He is your guy. You're going to live and die with him. You paid him a lot of money, and fans in Anaheim/LA/Disneyland, whoever's the fans of the Angels, they expect to win. So they needed to make something happen. And in terms of Pujols turning it around, I think it's only a matter of time. He started slow, never this slow, but he started slow in the past, and he's always found a way out of it. He's going to get his. Maybe his production will be down this year compared to prior years, but I have a feeling he's going to start to turn it around right now.
Let's hope so, because we were doing predictions, Ari, on the show, me, Ari, and Ari Louis, that is, and Andy Gershman before the season or the first week, and I was the only one who said, you know what, this Ranger team is explosive. They're returning everyone. They added Darvish, who I think will be better than Wilson in the long run. And I predict them to not have a problem in first place. But Andy and Ari were really riding the Angels bandwagon. I want to get to that next. Why were people so high on this team? Was it just the addition of Pujols? You look at the outfield, and we've joked on this on the show many times. The outfield is the most overpaid and most overrated outfield in baseball, and I can tell you that firsthand from having Vernon Wells in our salary role for paying him $20 million to do nothing. Then you have Torrey Hunter on the other side getting paid $18 million, and he's way past his prime. So why were people so excited about this Angels team going into the season when the Rangers had been to 2 World Series in a row?
Yeah, it's interesting. At the beginning of the year, I thought that the Rangers and Angels would be neck to neck. I think I went with the Rangers winning the division, although I thought it would be close. And the Angels' pitching is very good. I mean, Jerry Weaver is having a great year. Dan Herron is not having a good year, but normally he's having a pretty good year. The Angels also did sign T.J. Wilson from the Rangers. And also, Irvin Santana is a very good pitcher, although he is not having a good year either. They had a very good closer in Jordan Walden last year.
Right.
He struggled. He's now out of the closer role.
Right.
So I think the pitching was something that a lot of people were looking at that made the Angels very strong, especially with the addition of T.J. Wilson. And you add in Albert Pujols. Yeah, Torrey Hunter and Vernon Wells, they're a little bit overpaid, but they're still decent players.
A little bit? Ari, a little bit overpaid? that's being...
Well, I'm being modest here. But they're still, my point is they're still decent hitters, and Torrey Hunter can still hit the ball a little bit. And then you have a guy like Howie Kendrick, a very good hitter up the middle as well. So I think overall they have a very good team. Now, with the additional wild card, and you look at the landscape of the American League, the AL Central is only going to have one team coming out of there. Most likely, it'll be the Cleveland Indians, maybe the White Sox make a run, but there's only going to be one team coming out of the AL Central. The AL East, who knows how that's going to shake out. So to me, I feel like if the Angels can get things going, and the talent that they have on their roster, they can secure one of those wild card spots if teams start to slip up in the AL East. Of course, I'm sure you don't want that to happen because the Blue Jays will be one of those teams going after that wild card. But I think the Angels have the talent to pull out of it, and I expect them to finish in second place in that division. It's just a matter of whether they'll have enough wins to get into the playoffs at that wild card.
Right, you know what? I got to give a shout-out to Mike Trout, the guy who really, I think, is going to get a lot of attention this year. Him and Bryce Harper are really the two guys that are considered, actually in some, believe it or not, in some publications, Mike Trout was given even better scouting potential ratings than Bryce Harper. This is a big guy. He's 20 years old. He's also 20 years old. I mean, Harper's 19 but turning 20 soon. He's 20 years old. He's playing every day now in the center field. They called him up. He's hitting 333, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs. And this guy is a guy who they're really depending on in the future. I was, again, reading another article saying they were never planning on bringing him up this early. But with the struggles of Pujols, they don't want to get too behind the Rangers. I mean, this Rangers team can roll. The pitching staff this year has been great. They added a great closer to their pitching staff, Joe Nathan from Minnesota, who was a great guy there for years and years that didn't really get a lot of attention, got a lot of all-star appearances, but not necessarily attention because it was the Twins, not the best market. But Texas right now is 7 games ahead of LA, and that 7's a lot. We're only May 17th. That could turn out into 10 or 11, and once you get to that point, it kind of gets bad. But we got to know, last year's collapse by the Braves, last year collapsed by the Red Sox. Everything's possible, right?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I still think ultimately Texas is going to win the division. They're hitting the ball very well. Obviously, Josh Hamilton is possibly heading towards a Triple Crown. Obviously, that's something that will be talked about the entire baseball season. They have a very good lineup, and pitching-wise, Yu Darvish continues to pitch very well. Colby Lewis has had a decent year, and they also have other good pitchers like Matt Harrison and a pretty good bullpen as well. So I think the Rangers will win the division no matter what. I think they're just too strong. But the Angels, like I said, I definitely see them finishing in second place in that division. Seattle and Oakland, they're just very mediocre to bad teams. And like I said, it's just a matter of whether they can win that wild card. And I think it'll come down to the Angels or any team in the American League East. So we'll see what happens. And Trout is a very good player. You're right. Bryce Harper certainly already receiving a lot of attention as the early possible Rookie of the Year candidates in their respective leagues.
Right, and next team we want to go all the way to the East Coast now. And I want to say that I'm sorry to Baltimore Oriole fans out there who have been listening. Right before the season, we had a segment on. I completely bashed Nick Markakis and Adam Jones, saying that they've been in the league for 6 years and they haven't done anything. Nick still hasn't proven much to me this year. But Adam Jones right now is my favorite for the AL MVP. And I know that sounds crazy, but you look at the team, they're 24-14. Adam Jones is leading the team in average, home runs, RBIs, runs, and stolen bases. Stolen bases and runs, you know he's going to do that. But home runs and RBIs, and even average, that's very impressive. This guy is 26. He's been in the league since he was 20, or he was first called up when he was 20. Him and Nick Markakis have the same thing. They're both the same age, have been in the league around the same time. People have been waiting for them to break out for years. They both have pretty big contracts, a lot of money. The Orioles are rolling right now. I mean, it's a weird thing to say. I know it's only 6-7 weeks into the season, but as you mentioned earlier, Ari, the Yankees seem to be struggling. The Red Sox seem to be struggling. Tampa Bay is right now tied with the Orioles. I mean, do you have any faith in this team that they maybe could do this for another month or another 2 months, or God forbid, maybe get a wild card? Is that possible?
I think it's definitely possible. Like I said, I don't really have too much faith in the Red Sox. I predicted on your show a few weeks ago that they would not make the playoffs, and I know Ari Louis wrote it down to make sure that he had that prediction down there. I'm sticking by that. I don't think they're making the playoffs. I think they're getting older. Bobby Valentine's not working there, and the division is much better than it's been. And then the Yankees, like I said, a lot of injuries. Not having Mariano Rivera is huge. Not having Michael Pineda is huge. Yes, they can always hit the ball, but Teixeira is not having a great year. So I think the Yankees are down. And that basically comes down to the Rays, Orioles, and Blue Jays. The teams, although the Rays have been good in recent years, the teams that have kind of been the doormat in the division. You look at the Orioles, you mentioned Markakis. You mentioned Adam Jones. Adam Jones had a game-winning home run last night in Kansas City. A big home run. Really shows his maturity and really shows how far he's come along the last few years. You have a stable veteran guy in J.J. Hardy, who had a great couple of years in Milwaukee, then was kind of left for dead, and now all of a sudden has had a resurgence with the Orioles the last couple of years. So they have a nice mix of young talent and veterans. You look at a guy like Matt Wieters, the catcher, a very good hitter as well, and a pretty good young pitching staff. So I think ultimately the Rays will win this division. They have great pitching, although they've suffered a couple of injury setbacks with Longoria, and one of their pitchers just went down. I can't remember which one it was, with a leg injury. But you take a look at the Rays team, I think they'll win that division. And we'll see what the Orioles can do. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think they'll be competitive the whole year. Will they win the wild card? If I was a betting man, I would say no. I think ultimately it will be the Yankees and the Angels. I think both teams will find ways to win. I'm sorry about that. I'm not really sold on the Blue Jays yet. I know you're sad to hear that, but I think they'll be in there till the end, as will the Orioles. It's going to be very, very interesting in both leagues with this additional wild card.
Right, and the thing that's a key stat with this Oriole team, which has been a problem for really since, I guess, Cal Ripken and Brooks Robinson those days, they're 12-5 on the road. That's I think that's tops in the big leagues. So that's something that, when your young pitchers can go on the road and dominate a game, that's impressive. They're 13-7 against the AL East, so they have a great record, the best record against the AL East out of all teams in the AL East. So they're competing. I mean, the only division they seem to have a problem with is the AL West, which I'm guessing most of those losses are probably to the Rangers and maybe a couple to Oakland, who's been playing well this year. 500 ball. We just had the owner of the Athletics on, Louis Wolf, so maybe having him on Israel Sports Radio helped that team a little. Who knows?
Oakland's not a bad team, but I think ultimately they'll finish in third place in that division.
Right, I agree with you. I like, Ari, that we agree on the Rangers thing. That's a really good thing to agree on because I don't know. I don't really see the hype on the Angels. I understand they have talent. They're already 7 back. Pujols needs to have an amazing season now just to hit 30 home runs. I mean, he needs to go crazy to do that. He's capable. I mean, he's capable of doing it, but we'll see what happens. Next, Ari, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Central. You kind of touched up on it earlier. You actually did not say anything about the Tigers, which was really shocking to me. You said the White Sox or the Indians. So I wanted to you might be the first person on Louis Live to have not given any love to the Detroit Tigers. So what's the hate? Why no Tiger love?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about them. But they're having some problems right now. They're talent-wise, they should win that division. Obviously, Verlander, one of the best, if not the best pitcher in baseball. They're having some bullpen issues right now. Prince Fielder is certainly not having the year that many people expected. Miguel Cabrera having a good year, but again, they're having problems. The Indians are playing pretty well right now. Chris Perez has done a great job as their closer. It's always important to have a good bullpen in that division because you have so many close games. I don't know. I think the Tigers, they have the ability and the talent to win that division. But the way they're playing right now, I don't know. I'm a little bit discouraged because I thought that they would easily win that division. Not like the Angels, where the Angels and the Tigers both made the big splashes in the offseason. The Angels, I knew it would be tougher because they have the Rangers in there. But the AL Central, I mean, those teams are pretty weak. The Indians, like I said, they're playing pretty good, but the Tigers should be better. So until the Tigers show me they have some heart and they could start winning some games, I'm really, down on them. I'm pretty down on them. I don't really see them, again, it's a weak division, so anything could happen, but I'm not huge fans of what they're doing right now.
Right, and I agree with what you said. A lot of teams that were supposed to be playing better haven't, and a lot of teams, like let's give some love to the Cardinals, who, no one said they'd be horrible, but I don't know if anyone predicted they'd be in first place, or maybe so. That division in the last few years has really gone downhill. The Cubs for a while dominated. They had that little stretch where they won 4 in a row when they had Derek Lee, who was doing his 350 game, and Alfonso Soriano Ramirez, or Aramis Ramirez, but they're gone. Houston Astros have been a non-factor for years. Now the Brewers were really the competition for the Cardinals and Reds, but now the Brewers, with the loss of Prince Fielder, I don't know if we should count them out, but they're definitely missing something, and it's obvious. And the Pirates, it's the Pirates, enough said. The Reds are a very intriguing team. The Reds made the playoffs not last year, but the year before that. They have a lot of talent. They have a great manager in Dusty Baker. And I really like Phillips, the second baseman on that team. I've seen him play. He's a great, great defensive player. He needs to maybe improve his hitting. But they do have Joey Votto. They do have Jay Bruce. One of them is Jay Bruce, I believe. I'm mixing up. One of them is from Toronto, so I got to give some love to him. The MVP, which was Votto, is from Toronto, so I got to give him some love. He plays on the national team sometimes. But this Red team is very interesting. I feel like they're not getting any attention right now. So what are your thoughts on this Red team maybe catching on to the Cardinals and maybe giving them troubles come August, September?
I think the pitching has to be better in Cincinnati in order for them to compete with the Cardinals. The Cardinals right now, with Lance Lynn, Kyle Loesch, and Jaime Garcia, and not to mention Adam Wainwright, their pitching right now is one of the best in the entire major leagues. And because Pujols is not on the team anymore, I feel like they're kind of flying under the radar. David Freese is quietly having a pretty good year, the World Series hero from a year ago. And, they are a very, very good team with veterans and good young players. And like I said, the pitching has been great, and they have a great bullpen. So I don't see them losing the division at this point. The Reds pitch a lot here. Phillips, Votto, Jay Bruce is having a monster year, a lot of home runs. The pitching has really been there for Cincinnati, in my opinion. Matt Latos has been good as of late, but started bad. That was a guy that they were keying on, contributing. They picked him up from the Padres this past offseason. So we'll see. The Reds, I think ultimately they'll be on the outside looking into the playoffs. I think the Cardinals will win that division as long as their pitching keeps up and they stay healthy. I think they'll win that division. But the Reds certainly are the closest thing the Cardinals will have to competition because of teams like you said in that division, the Astros, the Pirates. The Brewers are definitely not the same without Prince Fielder, and their pitching hasn't been as good this year either. So I see the Cardinals winning that division, but the Reds, they certainly have some firepower to make a playoff push.
Right, Ari, and you know what? This wouldn't be a segment with Ari and Raphael if we did not have a college basketball question. So we are going to end on a great college basketball question regarding a team from your conference, from your Drexel team. Big news out of the Colonial Conference that VCU will be joining Butler in the Atlantic 10. So next year we're going to have a Butler, VCU, and Xavier, and teams like Dayton and St. Louis and et cetera, et cetera. So the Atlantic 10 is the new, you look at that, you could have 5, maybe 6 bids out of the Atlantic 10 next year, maybe 7, who knows. So being a guy from Drexel, working for Drexel, what are your thoughts on VCU making the transition and the switch to the big boys?
Well, first off, for the Atlantic 10, it's a great addition for Butler and VCU, with Temple and Charlotte leaving, 2 of the better teams in the conference. It's a huge addition for them for basketball. And like you said, they'll certainly get at least 4 bids, I feel like, to the NCAA tournament. Butler should be much better next year, and VCU only lost 1 starter, and they have a very good young team. From Drexel's perspective, I think it's a great thing because VCU, while they weaken the CAA by leaving overall, there's still a lot of very good teams in the CAA with teams like George Mason in a Final Four run a few years ago. Old Dominion, a very good team that's gotten a couple of wins in the NCAA tournament as well, and then a couple up-and-coming teams like Northeastern and Delaware. But what this does is, this basically makes Drexel the odds-on favorite to win the conference this year. And one thing that, with VCU being in the conference, they hosted the postseason conference tournament in Richmond, Virginia every year. So every year, no matter what, there were about 3,000 to 4,000 VCU fans at a supposed neutral court. So now the tournament will be hosted by somebody else, so there won't be as many VCU fans, essentially giving them a home court advantage, and it really gives Drexel the leg up to make the NCAA tournament. So I think a lot of people at Drexel are not excited, but pretty pleased with the move that VCU has made, and it's really opened the door for the Dragons to make the big dance this coming year because they basically bring back their entire team.
Right, and I just know I had to ask you that, especially working for the University of Drexel. I know that it probably was a sad thing there because VCU kind of helped give your conference more star power, but as you just mentioned, great point, there's a lot of great schools left, including Drexel and Old Dominion, etc. There's a lot of great schools. Ari, it's always a pleasure. We always have a great time here at Louis Live and Israel Sports Radio. We're looking forward to speak to you next week. And by the way, good luck to your Sixers this week, and I'll be rooting for them.
Thank you. Yeah, they'll need it after that blowout last night. I know you didn't ask me a Philly question, but they won 4 in a row, and Chase Utley and Ryan Howard are rehabbing, so look out for my Phillies.
All right, we'll look out for the Phillies. Thanks, Ari. Have a good day.
Thanks, Raphael.
All right, so that was Ari Bluestein, our Philadelphia insider and baseball insider. We love talking to baseball with him. During the college basketball season, Ari and I just go back and forth. He works for Drexel as their play-by-play guy, and he has a great knowledge of the mid-major game in college basketball, which is rare these days. A lot of those guys on ESPN don't even know much about the mid-majors. So they know about the great schools in the mid-majors, but it's rare when you can talk to a guy about the bad teams in the mid-majors and examine all the teams in the Colonial Conference and all the teams in the Mountain West and all that kind of stuff. So it's always fun to have Ari. We're going to take a break for 2 minutes, then we're going to come back and speak to Adam Young, who does a lot of great stuff. He's a great young broadcaster. He right now works in the minor league baseball system, so we're going to talk to him about that. We're going to talk to him about St. Louis Cardinals since it's in the St. Louis area. And then at 11:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 local time, we're going to be having Zvi Tversky from Slam. He's a senior editor. We're going to talk to him about the playoffs. I know that he went to a game last night, I believe. I saw on Twitter. So we're going to talk to him about a lot of great stuff. So please stay with us, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com. When the bases are loaded, smart investors don't step back. Find out what they're doing from international money expert Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt Show, Mondays at 7 p.m.
We're standing outside El Gaucho restaurant here in downtown Jerusalem, and we see another happy, satisfied customer. Ma'am, what is your name?
Keshet?
And what'd you think of El Gaucho restaurant?
Incredible. I'm not much of a meat eater, but when I do eat meat, I go out to El Gaucho. My husband brought me here for an anniversary dinner, and I wasn't crazy about going to a meat place for an anniversary dinner, but the meat was so tender that I had to come back a second time, so here I am for the second time.
Well, you heard it right from the cow's mouth. El Gaucho in downtown Jerusalem.
This is Tamar Cass, and you're listening to Israel Sports Radio.
DJ Venom, DJ Venom, DJ Venom, DJing parties throughout Israel, birthday parties, weddings, club events, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and much more. You pick the type of music, and DJ Venom will turn your event into the party of the year. Available Sunday through Thursday. Call 052-952-6506 or email djvenom1984@yahoo.com. That's 052-952-6506 or email djvenom1984@yahoo.com. Book your party today. That's DJ Venom.
This is Dimitri Salita, and you're listening to IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Broadcasting live from Jerusalem. IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Welcome back to Louis Live. Today we have a great show. We're going into our second hour right now. Our first hour was great. We had our Bluestein, our Philadelphia insider. We had Scott Powers from ESPN Chicago. It's been a great show. We hope everyone out there, America, Israel, Canada, Germany, wherever, Mexico, is enjoying our show and having a great Thursday. Our next guest is a up-and-coming young broadcaster who works for a minor league baseball team. He's involved in a lot of other great stuff. And at Louis Live, we love to have everyone on our show. That's a very, very big thing for us. So we are going to be dialing him up right now. His name is Adam Young. He's an up-and-coming sportscaster, and it's going to be very exciting to talk to him and see what's going on with him, what his future plans are. We're going to talk some Cardinals baseball, learn more about the AAA.
Hello?
Hi, am I speaking with Adam Young?
Yes, it is.
Adam Young, you're live on Israel Sports Radio and Louis Live. How you doing out there?
Very good, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to have people on from all sorts of angles, guys, and doing play-by-play for baseball, basketball. We love to have everyone on. We just had on the play-by-play guy of the Hawks. We love to hear about what people are doing. So I want to start off and talk to you about right now what you're doing for your minor league baseball team, for the Gateway Grizzlies. How did you get involved with that? You're a young guy. You're only, I think, 22, 23. How do you get, such a great job at such a young age, and how do you like doing, I believe I read something, 90 to 100 games a year of baseball?
Well, I love it. I'm at the ballpark right now. We have our opening day tomorrow. This is the greatest time of the year, in my opinion. Getting a chance to call baseball every single day. It's a treat. It can be difficult at times, especially when you get to that 70, 80 point of the season when you've done a game, say 30 straight days, but I love it. And as far as, getting this job at the age of 23, I began calling Grizzlies games last season. And when I got this job, I had just turned 22. It's 20 minutes away from my hometown. This is the team I grew up watching.
Wow.
So it's a treat for me getting the chance to call games close to home. We're on a 2-station radio network here in St. Louis. One of the stations, our flagship, is an all-sports station. So I get a chance to be on a premier all-sports station right next to my hometown each and every night during the summer. And this is the market I want to stay in. I've always wanted to work in the St. Louis sports market. So I get a chance, I guess, to kind of audition for bigger and better jobs each and every night during the summer, and being around the players, the travel, I love all of it. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in minor league baseball by any means, but, at this age and at this point in my career, I love what I get to do every single day. I cherish it. I know I'm lucky, and I just continue to work hard and improve myself each and every time I'm on the air.
Right, that was very well said. We've been around radio for a while too, so we love our jobs. It's doing sports and radio and getting an opportunity to make it a living is just an amazing opportunity for everyone. As you mentioned, you're in the St. Louis area. A lot of stuff going on right now in the St. Louis baseball area. We just had our MLB Insider on a couple minutes ago, and we were talking about Albert Pujols. You said you were from that area. You said you were raised there. The Cardinals are rolling right now by great pitching by Lynn and Loesch and a lot of great guys, great hitting. Are Cardinals fans, I mean, it's a weird thing to say, Adam, but are Cardinals fans kind of happy that they didn't give Pujols the $250 million contract to stay in St. Louis?
I think so. If you listen to sports talk radio in St. Louis, that's been the talk of the town, even though he's not even here anymore. I think some fans kind of enjoy seeing him hit under 200, while other fans, wish that he would have some success, but are glad that he's not here. Everyone was very upset when Pujols left. But now that he's hitting, 193 with a couple of home runs, everyone has kind of changed their opinion. And the Cardinals have certainly exceeded a lot of people's expectations. No one thought that Carlos Beltran would be hitting this well. No one thought that Lance Lynn would have 6 wins at this point of the season. So a lot of guys have really stepped up in Pujols' absence. And when you look at the lineup right now, and I know if Pujols would have signed with the Cardinals, they wouldn't have got Beltran. But if you look at the lineup right now, the Cardinals and manager Mike Matheny, they're struggling to fit in guys like Alan Craig, who's hitting 400. I mean, they're struggling to put guys in the order that need to be in the order. So if Pujols was here, you wouldn't have Beltran, but you'd still have some issues. So, the way I put it is, what if Pujols was hitting 193 here, and you'd have Alan Craig, who's waiting in the wings, hitting 400? I'm sure Pujols would still play every day, but it would be an interesting situation.
Right, great point there. And, Carlos Beltran struggled with the Mets, kind of, I guess you could say struggled with that Giants. He didn't really help them make the leap that they're expecting into the playoffs. And, yeah, great point. I mean, it's really weird. I bet no one would have guessed this. If you look at it, Carlos Beltran is kind of, this year's, Lance Berkman. He's kind of doing what Lance Berkman did last year. So I guess the argument before used to be that it would be La Russa could get the players to get the most out of the players. But maybe it's just if old guys now start coming to St. Louis, maybe their career will be revived. Who knows? I want to ask you now, as you mentioned, a little bit more about Lynn, because I'm sure you know about Lance Lynn. I'm sure you know more about him than the average fan. We have a lot of MLB listeners who are listening right now. And this guy is a guy who actually came from Indiana. I spent 8 years in Bloomington, Indiana, so I actually know about him. But I want to hear from you about what you could tell us about him, stuff that maybe people didn't know, or just some interesting stuff about Lynn, if you can.
Well, I go back to 2008 when I was covering the Cardinals. That's when they drafted Lance Lynn. Their first pick was Brett Wallace. Their second pick was Lance Lynn. And I was in the war room with all the media guys in St. Louis back on that day in 2008 when they drafted Lance Lynn. Jeff Lunau, the then director of player development, was talking about Lance Lynn and raving about this big, burly right-hander from Ole Miss. And I always knew he'd be good. I was questioning why they had him in the bullpen, because he has that stamina, he has that big body, and he has a bunch of really good pitches that I know fits in well within a starting rotation. So he pitched okay last year in the bullpen. I wouldn't say he was great. He was okay in the postseason. But now that he's in that starting rotation where he's been his whole life, he's really exceeded a lot of people's expectations this early on in his career. Everyone knew he'd be pretty good. People were kind of saying, well, will he be a 2 or 3 starter, or will he be a 4 or 5? I think he's going to be a top end of the rotation guy. But I remember back in that day in 08, whenever they drafted Lance Lynn with their second pick, Jeff Lunau said, this kid's going to be good. And, I read up about him and was listening to everyone, as far as the draft gurus are concerned within the Cardinals. And everyone really liked him. He had a big body, had a really good career at Ole Miss. Kind of flew through the Cardinal system, put up really good numbers, and now he's been great in St. Louis. I don't think he can keep up this pace, and that's what everyone's saying in St. Louis is, look, Lance Lynn's not going to go 20-5, okay?
Right.
He'll probably be 14 or 15 game winner this season, which is great, because when Lance Lynn came into this season, everyone said, okay, I guess Lance Lynn's our 5 starter. People wanted Roy Oswalt.
Right.
Now you got Lance Lynn, and he's the 5 starter for the Cardinals. And he's 6-1, 6-2. So
6-1, right?
He's been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems that, like I mentioned earlier, it seems like these Cardinals get these pleasant surprises a lot. So that's, of course, Rafael Furcal also having a monster year. I remember when the Cardinals signed him, people were saying he was a little washed up at the end of his time with the Braves. I guess Braves fans were saying that. We have a lot of Braves fans on the show, but he's definitely proving them wrong. Being on that, he had some key hits in the World Series last year. And, but an interesting thing about this Cardinals pitching staff right now is that they are, Chris Carpenter is missing. And Chris Carpenter, I'm a huge Chris Carpenter fan. My family's all from Toronto, so the Blue Jays have been my favorite team for years and years. And this is a guy that Roy Halladay really mentored in, I think it was 2000, 2001, or the early 2000s, maybe 2003. And he went on to have a great career, same as Halladay. But this guy's a guy who's really struggled with injuries the last few years. And it's amazing that they're able to put up these great numbers without him. So I know he's having some problem with his nerves right now. And that with stuff like that, Adam, you never know when guys are going to come back with nerve injuries and with shoulder injuries. So I was just wondering if you had any inside scoop or any insight of what you've been hearing out of St. Louis on thoughts of when Chris can make his return.
I'll tell you what, no one's really talking about Chris Carpenter right now here in St. Louis. His name is not brought up very often.
Okay.
I think if the rotation would have been struggling, people would have been saying, where's Carpenter at? But you look at it right now, everyone knows his injury was serious. Will he come back this season? I don't know. He's towards the end of his career. It would be much different if he was 25, 26, but Carpenter's in his mid-30s now, and everyone's seen this before. He's very injury-prone. You can never really count on Chris Carpenter for a full season or really even a half a season, it seems like. When he's healthy, he's outstanding. But no one's really been talking about Carpenter, and I think it's because the rotation has been so good. I have heard some rumblings, and people have been saying, if Carpenter does come back, then who goes out of the rotation right now? I mean, The only guy who has struggled has been Adam Wainwright, and we know Adam Wainwright isn't going to be out of the rotation.
Yeah.
He's a 1 or 2 guy in this league. So Adam Wainwright, whether he's got a 4 or 5 ERA, he'll be in that rotation. So if Carpenter does come back, I don't even know what they do right now. I guess, Garcia's been up and down. He's been kind of inconsistent. Was really good last night, but, man, if Carpenter comes back, it's a good issue to have. It's an excellent issue to have. Who do you take out of the rotation because everyone's throwing so well? But the Carpenter talk has really subsided. It was really heavy around spring training, and then right when the season got underway, the rotation did so well early, and they've been able to pretty much maintain that pace. No one's really talking about Carp.
Right, and that's a great point. Adam Wainwright, who at the time, for a year or two, he was kind of the leader of this team. After coming back from that injury, he had a great year. And it was 2-4 and 6 ERA, and still the Cardinals have, I think, Loesch is, second in the major leagues in wins. So, this is just an amazing job, also by Mike Matheny, the first-year manager, in a pretty usually competitive division. Milwaukee's down this year, but I predict at the start of the year Cincinnati would have a bounce-back year after last year, with Votto and all those great guys, Jay Bruce, and I love Brandon Phillips. I love his game so much. It kind of reminds me of Orlando Hudson, who played on the Blue Jays a few years back. I don't know if you remember him. But, it's great to have someone on from the Cardinals. I want to now go back more to your career because you've done a lot of great stuff. You also have another gig. You also work for Southern Illinois, Edwardsville. So I want to ask you, before we go into that, how do you work for the baseball team and work for Southern Illinois? I know Southern Illinois, there's no school in the summer, but still you must always be busy and not have any downtime. So what is that like for you?
Yeah, if I have a week off during the whole year, that's a treat. I work full-time here for the Grizzlies, actually. I'm their media relations director as well. I do some sales in the off-season, and I do speaking engagements. So I'm here all year round. I worked at SIU Edwardsville. It's actually where I went to school, and I graduated there in May 2010. I broadcast basketball for them, some other sports as well, but my main gig is basketball. And I travel with the basketball team. They're Division I. So it's outstanding getting the chance to go to all these awesome gymnasiums around the United States and call Division I basketball. So that's a great highlight of my career so far. And I also broadcast at Division II McHenry University and Division III Washington University in St. Louis. So this past year, my schedule worked out pretty well where I could kind of fit everything in. I missed a couple of games here and there at McHenry, but for the most part, I was able to do a full schedule with them. I broadcast football, basketball, soccer, hockey, baseball, you name it. So everyone says, well, how does your schedule, fit all this stuff? And it's very precise. I have a planner, and I mark everything down, and pretty much it's first come, first serve as far as the schedules are concerned. Whenever I get the schedules, I fill it in the calendar, and whenever the next school comes, I fill that in the calendar, and I tell them, hey, I can't do this day because I'm here. But everyone's been very accommodating. The Grizzlies have been, SIUE has been, McHenry, and I fill in at WashU in St. Louis. So I'll tell you what, it's hectic, but I love what I do. I wouldn't change any of this for anything because I do know how difficult this business is, and I do know how hard it is to get jobs. So, I tell myself and I tell everyone else, a lot of people say, hey, you need to calm down and, enjoy life. You're only 23 years old. You don't need to be calling a game every single night. And what I say to them is, look, there could be a point in my career when I'm struggling to find a gig. So right now when I have 3 or 4 at one time, I'm going to do 3 or 4 at one time. I'm not going to look back in the rearview mirror and say, man, I shouldn't have let that one go.
Right.
I love what I do. And if I'm broadcasting every single night, that's what makes me happy. I want to make it to the top of this business. And the more times I'm on the air, the more people will hear me.
Right. And, we're huge college basketball fans here at Israel Sports Radio. We have a lot of great guests on, a lot of coaches. We had Josh Passer and Brad Stevens, Keith Denbrock from Akron, a lot of great coaches. So, I was thinking Southern Illinois University Edwardsville. I didn't know much about them. I did some research on the Ohio Valley Conference, and what do you know? Morehead State, who made the NCAA tournament, and of course Murray State, really the mid-major team of the year last year, who was ranked in the top 15 with Isaiah Kanan, a great point guard. He's coming back for a senior year, I believe. You would know that better than me. And there's a lot of tradition. Eastern Illinois, I believe Tony Romo went there, was undrafted quarterback out of Eastern Illinois. So you're in a great basketball conference, so that must be really exciting for you. And as you mentioned, D1, and from what I'm also reading, Belmont's going to be joining you guys. And Belmont almost beat Duke this year. They lost by 1 point in Cameron Indoor Stadium, and they're considered a very, very interesting team. And it's interesting to see a lot of these teams. It appears most of the conference is Tennessee and Kentucky. And Kentucky has great, great hoops, of course, with University of Kentucky Wildcats, who won the championship, and Louisville, who was in the Final Four, who played them in the semifinals. So there's great hoops in your area, in your region. That's really cool to hear from a fellow broadcaster to another broadcaster that you love being on the air every night, and you are on the air every night. And you mentioned that opening day starts tomorrow for the Gateway Grizzlies, correct?
Yes, starts tomorrow.
Right.
We're ready to go. It's a beautiful day here in St. Louis, and I'll tell you what, there's nothing like opening day. Nothing like opening day, getting in that groove, getting the season started. You mentioned Murray State, and I'll go back to that for a second. Had the chance to see Isaiah Cannon play in person a couple times last season. I'll tell you what, guys, he's going to be one of the premier guards in all of college basketball next season. He kind of flew under the radar a couple of seasons ago, and then everyone kind of knew about him last year because Murray State was undefeated. He is a special, special player. I believe he'll be playing in the NBA, and I think he's going to be one of the top guards in all of America next season.
Right.
Outside of the OVC, everyone knows about Isaiah Cannon now, and a couple of years ago when he was a freshman, it was everyone within the OVC. All of us knew who Cannon was. No one else did. Now everyone does know.
Right, and, at Israel Sports Radio, we have a lot of great guys. One of our insiders actually works for Drexel basketball, so we love to talk mid-majors. And a guy this year who we believe could be potentially the next, quote-unquote, Jeremy Lin, or the next guy who might get undrafted, and is Zach Rosen from University of Pennsylvania, a great, great young player. I don't know if you know much about him. I'm guessing you've heard of him or seen him play. And he's another great guard who had a great season last year. I would say him and Cannon were kind of the mid-major guards of the year. Rosen didn't get much attention, but still averaged, I think, 18 a game, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds, something crazy like that. And he's gained a lot of looks. He just got Leon Rose, who is a huge agent in the NBA, just signed him. So we're hoping good things for him because he's Jewish, and we always support our Jewish athletes out there. And if not, he'll come to Israel and play for a very, very strong Maccabi Tel Aviv basketball team, which is one of the best basketball teams in the world outside of the NBA. So we're excited for that. Adam, we want to thank you so much for coming on, and we want to give you a chance to give a plug. How do people listen to your games on all the networks, Sean? Can they go to your website? What do they do to learn more about you?
Well, first of all, guys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Anytime. I really appreciate it. They can listen to the games by going to ksns.com, click Listen Live. They can also listen live at gatewaygrizzlies.com. So just go to gatewaygrizzlies.com. On the top right hand in the corner, just click Listen Live. You can listen to all 96 of our regular season games. Hoping for a fun season. And, guys, I really appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely, Adam. We'd love to have you on in the summer and break down some more of a Grizzlies baseball. Like I said at Lewis Live, we love to have people on from all over the country. We love minor league baseball, and we love college sports. So thank you for coming on, and have a great day out there, okay?
All right, thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Wow, so that was a great interview with Adam Young, a young guy who definitely has a lot of potential. I'd say 7-10 years, with 32 years old, 33 years old, we'll be talking to the play-by-play guy of the St. Louis Cardinals. You never know. Or maybe the Memphis something Firebirds, I believe, or the AAA team for the Cardinals in Memphis. So you never know. He's a young guy. He's 22, 23. He has a great gig right now. He has 3 play-by-play jobs. Does a lot of freelance announcing. He also does some stuff for soccer. We love soccer here, or at least I do. Ari doesn't, so let me be more frank. Ari hates soccer. But, yeah, that was a great interview. We're going to talk a little bit right now, some NBA, and then we're going to bring in a great guest, Tvi Tversky from Slam Magazine. He was just he's really a great guy because he has a lot of interesting he really knows how to examine the game. He goes to a lot of the games. He just had a great interview with Allen Iverson on in Slam Magazine, which is really considered probably the best and biggest and number one NBA college high school basketball magazine in the world. They have really expanded to the European game, so we even know them here in Israel. But really what we're going to talk about with him, we're going to examine a lot of that Sixers series, the Celtics stuff. But we really want to talk about last night's game where Kobe Bryant and the Lakers looked like they were going to tie the series up. And let's be honest here. I'm not a Kobe hater. I love Kobe, but he really messed up in the last 2 minutes. I hate to say that. It's not a fun thing to say, but he really – I think the Thunder went on a 9-0 run. They lost the game. They're down 2-0 now. Things are not looking good in Lakerland. Kobe's usually not the one who does this stuff. It usually comes more from what I like to call the immature Andrew Bynum or the old Pau Gasol. I still love Gasol, but he's definitely starting to get old, and you definitely can see that in his game. His brother really is the guy you guys should watch out. Marc Gasol played in Barcelona BC, Barcelona Basketball Club. That is, the FC is the soccer team, which just finished their season in the La Liga in second place to Real Madrid. They'll be playing in the Copa Finals in about 2 weeks, on the 26th, so it's in about 9 days. But he's a great guy. Marc Gasol is also a great guy. We talked to Chris Wallace, the GM of the Memphis Grizzlies, about 10 days ago, and he gave us a lot of great insight into him because we, of course, like to look at European ball since we're in Israel and we have Maccabi here. But this is going to be very interesting to see if the Lakers can come back and bounce back and go back to Lakers land and Staples Center and tie the series up. I personally don't think it's going to happen. Ari, I believe, has some theory that the Lakers will do it. Not really sure why. We'll hear from him next week when he's back with us. And the Spurs and Clippers series, I think it's over already. I don't know why they're playing it. I think it's time to move on. Thunder, Spurs. And the East, that's really interesting. I've had the Pacers on for 3 months now, guys. Everyone who listens to this show every day knows that my loyalty to the Pacers and Indiana Hoosiers basketball is higher than anything. And I have a lot of faith in this team. David West down low. Roy Hibbert, the 7'3" guy. Now that Chris Bosh is out, no one can guard him. He's unstoppable. Roy Hibbert's a guy who has a lot of potential. Udonis Haslem, Joel Anthony, fellow Canadian, I got to say, Joel Anthony, who's on the national team. And Ronnie Turioff, who's just not really, he's a reserve player, guys. Let's be honest. He's not a starter in the NBA. He never really was. And I don't think they can stop the big men down low. We'll see what happens. And we're going to take a 4-minute commercial. When we're back, we're going to talk to Tzvi Twersky from Slam Magazine, his senior editor there. We're going to examine the 76ers and Celtics series, which seems to be a great series, 2-1. And we'll be right back, so please stay with us. This show is only 2 hours, so it's going to be our last segment. We're going to have a great show next Tuesday with a lot of great guests, and next Thursday, an even more special show. Tommy Smith from ESPN will be joining us. And the week after that, we're going to be having Simi Rager in the studio with Mark Stein from ESPN. He's our senior NBA writer. That's always very, very entertaining for all of our Israeli listeners who know about Simi. He's probably the most entertaining sports guy in Israel for sure, maybe in the world. He's so funny. He's a great guy. So we're going to have that for you guys in 2 weeks. Another preview, Larry Rosen, a VP of the Baltimore Ravens, is going to be joining us. We're working on getting Dan Snyder right now, the owner of the Redskins. So a lot of great guests will be joining us, and we hope you stay with us at Israel Sports Radio and Louis Live, and we'll be back in 4 minutes, so please stay with us.
Network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Body and Soul Gym in the heart of Talpiot. Great machines, excellent staff, and wonderful classes such as Pilates, yoga, and kickboxing. Give them a call at 02-678-8861. Once again, that's 02-678-8861. www.body-soul.co.il. Once again, that's www.body-soul.co.il. That's Body and Soul in the heart of Talpiot, which is great for your body and your soul.
You're already using a credit card every day. Why not feel good every time you make a purchase? When using the HAS Advantage Support Israel Visa card, a percentage of each purchase you make will be donated to your choice of 24 Israeli-based charities, while still earning a reward point for every dollar spent. But wait, these rewards are even better than the standard rewards you get, especially when using them towards Israel travel, with the best conversion rate on El Al's Matmeed frequent flyer program. Earn double points at some of your favorite supermarkets and restaurants in the U.S., as well as discounts all over Israel. If you love traveling and supporting Israel, HAS Advantage is the card for you. Just give us a call toll-free at 1-866-6-ISRAEL. Sign up right now with the code ISR10 to earn 2,500 bonus points. That's 1-866-647-7235. HAS Advantage. Earn rewards. Support Israel. Offer valid for U.S. citizens only. Terms and conditions do apply. When dialing from within Israel, please dial 1-800-200-818.
Israel Sports Dynamics specializes in football consulting, equipment, uniforms, and more. Great brands such as Nike, Russell Athletics, Shutt Sports Products, and many more. Just one call away. With over 30 years coaching experience with university and professional athletes, Terry Hill, owner of ISD, can advise you for all your sports needs. Call 054-581-3248. That's 054-581-3248, or visit our website at www.isdisrael.com. If that's not easy enough, click on the ISD banner on the Israel Sports Radio website and be part of the game.
Are you tired of paying for expensive gym memberships that you don't use? Are you frustrated by not seeing results? It's time for the X1. Israel Gym Systems is proud to launch the X1 suspension and bodyweight training system. Lose weight, build muscle, improve balance, coordination, and flexibility. With your purchase of the X1, you'll receive a free membership to IsraelGym.com and access to our archives of videos and exercise plans. Sign up today at www.IsraelGym.com and get ready for the new you. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Zvi, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're on right now, Louis, live in IsraelSportsRadio.com. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a while since we've had you on, and it's great to have you on. And it's the perfect time to have you on. We had you on a lot before the playoffs. Now we're, I guess you could say, deep into the playoffs, or second round. And I understand you were at the Sixers-Celtics game, so we'll start off with that, and then we'll transition to the other game in the East, and then we'll move on to the West. So last night, Celtics dominated, but before that, very close game. So what were your thoughts on the game last night?
Yeah, I mean, game one, kind of the Sixers were up the entire game, and the Celtics stole it at the end. And right after the game, the Sixers were very defiant in terms of they felt they should have won it, and they still felt confident, even though they were down 1-0 in the series. Come game two, they get the victory, and now public perception changes, and it's, can the Celtics keep up with the Sixers? Paul Pierce is hurt. Avery Bradley is hurt. Brandon Bass isn't playing well. And I heard after game two, Doc Rivers said last night before the game that Kevin Garnett really went off on his teammates after game two. He went off on their effort. He went off on them losing sight of the goal. He went off on them not taking Philadelphia seriously. And last night, they took him seriously right from the get. And I mean, it was a close game in the first quarter because the Sixers weren't missing any shots, but the Celtics just kept going and going and going. And the defining moment of the game to me, there was a few of them, but the really defining moments were, Paul Pierce, I think at one point was 1 for 7 or 1 for 8. And he had an N1 dunk, and then he followed up the next play, I think, or maybe 2 plays later with another dunk. And that answered the questions about how he was feeling, and that answered the questions about can the Sixers guard him, and that answered all the questions. And from there, I mean, the route was pretty much on. And if I would have told you before the game that Ray Allen would have taken one shot and finishing him with 3 points, would you have predicted, 16-point Celtics victory? No. Probably not, but it was that easy last night for them.
Right, and it was, as you said, the first 2 games, it really there was not a lot of effort from the Celtics. it was kind of like the Bulls series. The Celtics just figured, okay, we have the big three and Rondo at Israel Sports Radio. We call them now the big four. But it really, I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know that thing about Kevin Garnett, that he yelled at them, and it seemed like it worked. Really dominating the game last night. It really wasn't even worth staying up here in Israel, to be honest. I like to stay up for all the games. So we'll get back to that series when we do predictions at the end of the segment. But this is the most interesting series. I'm from Indiana. I've lived in Indiana. I'm a hardcore Pacer fan, a hardcore Indiana Hoosiers fan. I've been saying since the start of the playoffs, it is going to be the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. I love this Pacers team. I'm glad they're finally getting some attention. They're a 3 seed. I think they're going to roll in Indianapolis and win the 2 games. But I want to get your thoughts on the next 2 games and maybe talk a little bit. Actually, let's start off with Game 2. A lot of interesting things there. Mario Chalmers taking the shot. LeBron James missing 2 free throws. Dwayne Wade missing a layup. No one has talked about that, and I think that's important to mention. He missed a really crazy layup. So what were your thoughts on that Game 2 victory for the Pacers in Miami?
I mean, that was a great victory for them. Like you said, before the series, a lot of people already had Miami penciled or even penned into the Eastern Conference Finals. And I know I took exception to that because and I think the problem is a lot of people didn't get to watch them during the regular season. They were only on national TV so many times. They were only written about in major magazines and on the web, on ESPN so many times. But it really, if you look at it, their team is so deep, 1 through 10. It's unreal, and that was recognized yesterday when Larry Bird was named the Executive of the Year. That's the major award. He's the first person to be Coach of the Year, Executive of the Year, and MVP, and that tells you everything about him. In terms of that team, I mean, if you just go through it position by position, just match them up with Miami, it's really much closer than people think. Take Chris Bosh out of the equation, and Indiana may actually have the upper hand, and you could be correct about them coming out of that series.
Right, and what I've looked at is that Indiana, Danny Granger struggled in this series. The Heat cannot make a 3, and this is the biggest thing. This is the biggest, in my opinion, I want to get your opinion on it, of course, that no one can guard the guys down low. I mean, Haslam, he won the championship with Wade now 6 years ago. He's not the same player. Ronnie Turioff is not a starter, and Joel Anthony, I've seen him on the national Canadian team. My family's Canadian, of course. He's also not a starter. I mean, this team is really missing people down low. And I was watching Michael Wilbon was really slamming Mike Miller and Shane Battier, who haven't really done much either. So I think that
I mean, Haslam has definitely regressed from his heyday. I mean, Joel Anthony is what he is, and I mean, he's good at what he does, but Roy Hibbert is an oversized player, and that's a significant challenge to him that he doesn't have to face so often. I mean, Roy Hibbert, as Evan Turner told me last night before the Sixers game, is a legitimate top 4 big man in the NBA. Well, you're putting him up against a guy who I don't even know where he fits in that equation. If my numbers are 1 through 25, I don't know if he's in that 25. So, I mean, right there's a mismatch. Take Chris Bosh out of the equation, and David West is having a heyday. He looks so good in Game 2. He's definitely fully recovered from the ACL, and he was one of the best offseason signings.
Right, and a lot of people, great point there, a lot of people worried about that ACL. The same thing happened with Caron Butler last year, I believe, when people were deciding if they wanted to take him, or the Clippers eventually signed him, but he had that torn patella with the Mavericks and never played with them, and people were worried about that. He had a pretty solid season, you could say, with the Clippers. The Clippers are still in the playoffs. We'll get to them in a minute. But this Pacers team right now, just on paper, is very deep. They play 10 guys. Danny Granger, like I said, has not had a good game. Roy Hibbert, in fact, hasn't had a really great offensive game. As you just mentioned, David West, 16 points, 10 rebounds in the last game. He's been on good teams with Chris Paul, teams that have won 50-plus games. He knows what it's like to win. And Darren Collison, I've been looking forward to asking you this question to me. Darren Collison, I think, might be, I don't want to say the most underrated point guard in the NBA because his numbers don't really show it, but he is quick. And when he wants to penetrate into the lane, he's very capable. So what are your thoughts on Darren Collison and his backup as well? They have a great backup point guard as well.
Yeah, I mean, Collison is just an extraordinary tough matchup for the Miami Heat guards. Mario Chalmers isn't known for his speed, isn't known for his quickness. He's more of a shooter, and he kind of distributes, does his thing. But Collison's a tough matchup, and like you were saying, Collison is really underrated because if you think about this in college at UCLA, he was in multiple Final Fours, but look who got drafted ahead of him. Guys who backed him up. Russell Westbrook backed him up. Drew Holiday backed him up, and all these guys that got drafted ahead of him. You know, he slips in the draft, and then he gets traded. You know, he gets traded. He's already on the second team, and I mean, look at what he's doing. He's starting on potentially an Eastern Conference Finals team, potentially a Finals team, and I mean, you can't take anything away from him. Add in George Hill, and add in, you know what I mean? It's just they're very deep at every position. I think that's really what puts them over the top in terms of Larry Bird being Executive of the Year.
Right, and very young team, and they really struggled for 4 or 5 years. In Indiana, we used to joke that this team was just full of guys who went to jail. We kind of were like the Bengals of the NFL for a while. The Pacers, just guys like Marquise Daniels getting arrested, and really Sean Williams from the Memphis Tigers, just guys who were bad teams that were winning 20, 30 games in the O'Brien era. So it's great. This is great for Indiana. Of course, Indiana basketball in the university in Bloomington was amazing this year. So the future is very bright. Indiana, Zvi, I'm going to put you on the spot right now and ask you, do you think the Pacers will advance?
At the end of the day, I think they're going to lose in 7 merely because they don't have that home court.
Right. Okay. Well, at least you're giving them 7. I won't. With most of our listeners, I'll start yelling and arguing. But if you're going to do that, I'll give you respect. Moving now, actually, let's take kind of a halftime and talk. I wanted to know if you watched the EuroLeague finals this past weekend, because it was an amazing basketball game.
Yeah, you know, I got to watch it a little bit, not as much as I'd like. I mean, I'm sure it was a much bigger deal with your listeners than it is here, unfortunately, just because of when it takes place. But, yeah, I mean, it's becoming bigger and bigger over here every year.
Right, it was an amazing comeback by Olympiacos, who actually Israel did not play, or Maccabi Tel Aviv. I say Israel because Maccabi Tel Aviv is pretty much represented by, or, you know, they represent Israel in all these tournaments. They have great talent. I'm sure you know all about their players, since a lot of them have been in the NBA, and a lot of them hopefully will go to the NBA. Jeremy Pargo last year from Maccabi went to the Grizzlies, and we'll see what happens this year. They have a lot of interesting guys. A lot of guys on their team were drafted. It's very interesting to look at that. I was looking at that the other day, but none of them really made it. So, you know, EuroLeague ball, that's very competitive. But just wanted to touch up on that. Of course, it was a 17-point comeback for Olympiacos against all the Russians from Moscow. David Blatt, who's the Maccabi Tel Aviv coach, is the national team, the Russian national team head coach. So he was rooting for them. But it was a great game to watch here in Israel. And also there was that huge Manchester United, who's going to come in first place, and Man City scoring those 2 goals. I don't know if you caught that. I don't even know if you like soccer, but it was just a great day in sports.
Yeah, it definitely was. It definitely was. And I mean, speaking of David Blatt, I mean, I'm not sure how aware people are of this over there, but he is certainly in contention for a head coaching job in the NBA when the time is right. His name is known in all the right circles, and he's highly respected over here.
Yeah, and he's American. A lot of Israelis, it's so funny. You go up to them and tell them, because if you don't hear him talk, that's the joke in Israel. If you don't hear him talk, he looks Jewish. So if you're Jewish, then you're probably Israeli. Then as soon as he goes to the interview and starts speaking, he has that Anglo Hebrew, and doesn't sound Israeli at all. So that gives it away. But as you mentioned, I think we've had Doobie Pick on the show, and he said that a couple times too, that this guy is a guy who, I believe he's 51 or around that. He has another 2-year deal with Maccabi. After that, he could become an assistant in the NBA. He has a lot of good connections being American, and he's been a player here for a long time. So that'd be great for Maccabi and for David if he can make it to the NBA. Moving now to the Western Conference, Kobe Bryant. Wow, very tough loss last night. Laker fans thought that they got that win that would really make this series interesting. And then the Thunder just go on a run. So what do you think's going on right now? It's 7 a.m. right now, local time in L.A. How do you think Mike Brown and the management? What's next for the Lakers?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much sleep they got last night. You know, a tough game. They did everything they wanted to. You know, they made it a slow pace defensive battle. They made everything was funneled through the bigs on both sides. They made OKC do a lot of things they were uncomfortable with. I mean, aside from giving up 9 points in the last 2 minutes of that quarter, they held them to 20 points in the second half. 20 points in the second half, and they lost the game. And you really can't do any more than that defensively. It's really disturbing right now in terms of just the position the Lakers are in. they really can't do much more than they did last night.
Right. They played yeah, sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
They made it in the game they wanted to be. You know, they made Bynum a focal point. They got Gasol on the block. You know, they made Russell Westbrook settle for jump shots. They made Kendrick Perkins handle the ball. And yet still, the last 2 minutes, everything went the other way. And Kevin Durant hit the big shot, and Steve Blake couldn't. And that's what it came down to.
Right, and I don't know. Do you think Steve Blake is the guy? He's had a great series and great playoffs. He's kind of been the bench of the Lakers. No one else really has played that well. Maybe you could argue that Jordan Hill has played well, kind of. Not really, to be honest. But was Steve Blake the right guy to take that kind of shot and those kinds of shots throughout the game and towards the end of the game?
Yeah, I mean, the answer isn't easy to say, but it's like, you know, they drew up the play. Like Mike Brown said, it was a flare for Kobe. He came out, and the discrepancy is that Mike Brown is saying, we thought Kobe was wide open. And Kobe said, I thought I was open. But if you watch the play, he really wasn't open. You know, I think that the ball may have not even gotten to him. There's a good chance it would have gotten picked off. So that's tough to say. And like Artest said, like, Blake's in the corner. He's going to hit that shot. Like, what, am I not supposed to throw it to him? If guys are scared to shoot at the end of the game, your whole team's in trouble.
Right, and same thing moving back. I know we were kind of moved on, but same thing in Miami. Mario Chalmers shooting that last shot. It was interesting. We had one of our college basketball insiders on. They said that shot was very similar to that one that he made against Memphis in that national championship game. Now that I think about it, he kind of was coming around that screen and did the pump fake, got someone to jump. Of course, in the Memphis game, though, he made it. That was a big difference. Yeah. But LeBron, Dwayne, I mean, they were saying in the media there that the shot was written up for Chalmers. It wasn't as if, you know, Wade or LeBron just didn't want to shoot and they pass it off. In the huddle, they set it up for him. But the million. Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I guess maybe now it was that, you know, Phil Jackson on the Bulls drew up a last-second play for Tony Kukoc. Ended up set Pippen to the point where he didn't want to take the court, but he drew up the last-second play for Kukoc. So sometimes you have to do that. You have to go to the decoys sometimes, so that they remain decoys, so that people still pay attention to them. That way next time 5 guys can't guard Kobe. You know, they have to respect everyone. If he hits it, it's not even discussion. That was a brilliant play. And he misses it and they lose, and now we're, you know, saying Mike Brown's going to be out of a job.
Right, you know, it's interesting. If you look at it in a comparison to another sport, it's like the year when Bill Belichick from the Patriots went for it on 4th down in his own. It's one of those things where you say if it works, he's a genius. If it doesn't, he's fired. But a guy like Belichick, this is my issue, Tavine. I want to get more. A guy like Belichick has 3 championships. He can do things like that. He did that after he had won 3 championships. Should a guy like Brown, who really in Cleveland you could say is known as a choke artist, as a coach, a guy who's led it 2 years in a row, they had the best record in the NBA, and still couldn't get that ring. Should a guy like that be taking those kinds of risks?
You know, it's a tough comparison, but I mean, Mike Brown is a very good coach, and he's put in a very tough situation. No one wants to follow Phil Jackson. No one wants to follow all those championship rings. It's kind of like, what are you going to do about it? There was literally, I don't think anything Kobe could have done on that play different. And Kobe was 9 for 25 going into that point, so I'm not even sure what he would have done with it had he gotten it. So I mean, I don't, you know, I'm not going to put Mike Brown over the fire on that one. I mean, he's made some questionable calls, but that's not one of them to me.
Okay, we're on right now with Tzvi Twersky from Slam Magazine. He's a senior editor there, and we have about 10 minutes left in the segment, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Spurs series. There's a lot of interesting questions there, and then we're going to talk to you about an exclusive interview you had with AI. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners want to know what's going on in the world of AI, so we'll get to that in a couple minutes. But the Spurs Clippers series from game 1, it looks like it's over, but you never know with this Clippers team, because the argument it was when they won those 2, or when Memphis won those 2 games and they went to game 7, no one picked the Clippers to win, and they beat Memphis in Memphis. So do you think the Clippers are going to bounce back with a more valiant and better effort in game 2? And this game was a really, as well, another boring game to watch.
Yeah. I mean, it can't be a worse effort. You know, they were coming off a game 7. They were coming off a hard-fought series. They were tired. San Antonio was rested. So I kind of saw that game going that way. I think tonight's game will be a much better game. I think what could turn the series, though, is that there is a back-to-back on Saturday night and Sunday. Well, Saturday afternoon and Sunday, and really San Antonio all year didn't take back-to-backs too seriously. You know, Coach Popovich was focused on the playoffs, so he rested guys on the second end. Or, you know, they just didn't even try to win a couple of games like that. Well, now you can't exactly give up a playoff game, so it'll be interesting to see how Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, how those guys play on serious ends of back-to-backs. On the other hand, Blake Griffin is banged up, Chris Paul is banged up. It'll be interesting to see how those guys play on the second end of back-to-backs.
Right, and those guys, Blake Griffin made a comment a couple of days to the media, 80% in his knee, and I've been saying on the show last couple of days is that with a guy like Griffin who uses all his pressure to jump from his kneecap, it's not like he's a jump shooter. He uses all his pressure to elevate, get rebounds, do all those crazy dunks when he jumps over people. 80% in your knee is a problem. I mean, that's something that's really going to affect you, and Chris Paul had probably his worst game ever in his playoffs. So you know that's not going to happen again with a player like Chris. CP.
For sure not. For Blake, I mean, you're going up against Tim Duncan, who, yes, you know, he's old in years, but he's definitely still young in the game. He was as good this year as ever in terms of, yes, he played a lot less and his stats were down, but when he was in, he was as effective as ever. And I think he's really focused on winning this one because he might see it as his last one. It's similar to Kevin Garnett, and he's leaving everything out there because from what it sounds like and from what I'm seeing and hearing, he really thinks this might be his last run, and these guys are approaching it like that. Blake Griffin, this is his first time in the playoffs. He's still wide-eyed out there. Tim Duncan just wants to win. Blake Griffin's still taking it all in to an extent.
Right, and Tzvi, I want to ask you something now that a lot of people, for some reason, the people here in Israel and in Europe understand that Tony Parker is not a trillion years old. He's 29, 30 years old. He's been there forever because he was drafted when he was 18. But as you just mentioned, this might be the last year for Duncan, and you got to think that maybe if Duncan retires now, maybe Ginobili will join him. Ginobili's younger. I think he's 34. But is this a team that Parker is used to playing with these guys? These guys are his boys. This is the big three. Is he going to – Parker could be a huge money deal, a huge free agent. Is this a guy that would demand a trade or would want to leave the Spur organization if those guys were to retire or retire? What would be next for Tony?
I think Manu will be around, but I think there definitely has been a change in terms of this is now Tony Parker's team, whereas it used to be Tim Duncan's team. It really is Tony Parker. He calls all the shots on offense. He's more of a leader in practice. He's much more vocal than he used to be, and I think it's worked out for the team well. Going forward, I don't know. I think they're really just focused on this next month, and they'll take that next step after they see how this season ends.
Yeah, and I mean, again, a lot of people, for some weird reason, are calling them the underdog or the I don't know, and they're the number one seed. I think it's just because they're not maybe on TV a lot, or maybe they are on TV a lot, but it's at 10:30 Eastern time in America, or 9:30.
Yeah, they're a boring team. It's not a sexy pick. They lost last year to the Grizzlies when they were the higher seed, so people are kind of counting them out, but they're not counting that last year they were hurt. That there were a lot of things going on behind closed doors. Now they're healthy, they're with it, and they're all aligned on the same goal to win this championship. So I think they're a formidable foe for anyone, and that includes Oklahoma City Thunder, who they're probably going to end up seeing next round.
Right, and it's great to have you on because I've been talking about the roster. College basketball is probably my favorite sport, and their roster is loaded with great. I mean, this team, 15 guys on this team, a lot of them could either be starters or guys who are come right off the bench. I mean, from the bottom to the top, I'm just going to read our some names for our listeners. Of course, you know. But DeJuan Blair, the guy, undersized guy to Pittsburgh, who a lot of people worried about taking him, so he slipped to the second round. He's been playing great. Matt Bonner, amazing three-point shooter. He was with the Raptors last year. They loved him there. Boris Diaw, an all-star a couple of years ago, maybe getting paid a little too much money right now, but still, he's a capable player. And of course, Tim Duncan, Manu. But Danny Green, I want to ask you about him. It's his third year in the NBA. His first 2 years, he was a nothing, a no factor, and suddenly this was his breakout year. So why do you think that is he just like the Spurs system, or why has he had such a great year with the Spurs?
I mean, part of it has to do with Coach Popovich, hands down the best coach in the NBA. And I mean, it's funny because Pop said in the preseason he wasn't even sure that Green would make the roster. But, Manu got hurt. He got forced into the lineup, and he had a couple stellar games, and it went from there. And it's funny because him and Jeremy Lin this year became this big thing, but him and Jeremy Lin were backcourt mates last year in the D-League. And it's funny because if you look at it, Green probably actually had the better complete season of the two.
Right, definitely. I mean, Jeremy struggled after that big what was it, 8 days or 10? I don't even remember now because it was so long ago and it was so crazy. But after that happened, he kind of went downhill, and it's not really, I guess, the nicest thing to say or the best thing to say, but it's true. His numbers went down to more, average 14 points a game, 12 points a game, not these crazy 30 points and 26 points and 11 assists. And you're right. I mean, last night, Danny Green, I think, had 15, or 2 nights ago, Danny Green had 15 points, and he averaged 10 points in the season, 4 rebounds. He was a guy who, when he came out of North Carolina, a lot of people weren't so sure it was the right decision. I think he could have stayed another year. He decided to come out and wasn't picked till late in the second round. Was on Cleveland for a year, didn't do anything. Was on San Antonio for a little bit last year and didn't do anything. This year he's played in every single regular season game. That's also a hard thing to do if you're healthy, even if you're not healthy. That just shows the coach has confidence in you. So that's very interesting. So now, before we hear a little bit about AI, I want to get your picks on the first, or I guess let's start off with the 76ers game. Who do you like in that series? Who's going to advance there, and in how many games?
I think Boston's going to advance just because they're just so focused on it now, and barring injuries, I think that they have this series in 6 games.
Okay.
Again, as I said previously, I like Miami in 7. I think I like OKC over LA in 6, and I think I like San Antonio over the Clippers in 6. And I think that I think the conference finals would be a much better series than what we've seen so far, and I think the finals will be really, really good. I think next year we'll be back to a non-lockout normal season where everyone will have worked out over the summer, and we'll get some really good basketball in next season.
Right, and last question, sorry, before we get to the AI thing, I want to get your thoughts on the draft this year. We've had a lot of great draft gurus on the show. People are saying this is a very deep draft. After the first 2 picks, probably, most likely Anthony Davis and Drummond and maybe Beal, who knows. But after those 3 picks, pick number 3 to pick number 15, there's a lot of great talent, guys like Jared Sullinger, Perry Jones, Harrison Barnes from North Carolina. I mean, the list goes on and on. So are you looking forward to this draft? Do you think a lot of these guys are going to make an impact?
Yeah, don't forget Thomas Robinson and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who are probably the 2 and 3 picks in that draft. And I think Drummond's going to fall down a little further. But, yeah, it's a pretty deep draft. I've been a big fan of it for a few years. I think my biggest problem with it now is that everyone is so attached to it and everyone is hyping it so much that it's almost become overrated. I'm not sure how many immediate impact players are in it. I'm not sure how many long-term all-stars are in it, but I do know that it is a very good draft. I'm just not sure that it is what people are cracking it up to be.
Okay, great. So, Savi, what is new in the world of Allen Iverson? What is he up to these days?
Allen Iverson actually just came back from China where he was playing in a charity tour over there where it was like an all-star type team of like older NBA players who were just playing against local Chinese teams, and I think he had a great time there. And I think he would like to play there next season, if possible, professionally.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, despite all the negative stuff you're hearing, and despite just you hear money problems, marital problems, this problem, that problem, he seems to be in great spirits. He was with his kids when I saw him. He was happy. He was smiling. We talked a lot about the golden days in Philly.
Right.
Talked a little bit about, Detroit, talked a little bit about Denver and everything, and he really seemed like he was in a good place, which I was happy to see.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, because this last couple of years he had he had the issue with his daughter, I think. Is his daughter doing better now?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk so much about how everyone's doing, but, everyone was there and playing around. So, yeah, I mean, that we were talking about that because that's how his, career kind of ended in Philly. Was that he got selected for the All-Star game and he had to miss a few games, and then, he had some family problems. And he was saying, actually, that, there at the end in Philly, I think it was 2010 when he re-signed with them after Memphis let him go, he said that was the first time where the court wasn't his sanctuary. He said it was the first time where, he was out there drawing free throws, and if someone else was shooting them, he was kind of out there, and his mind would wander out of the stadium, and he was, thinking about the rest of his life. He said that, that was the biggest thing for him. The court was always the one place where he could find focus, where he could find calm, and otherwise what was a storm of a life. But he said that, when he kind of lost that, he knew that it was time to step away because he wasn't earning his money.
Right, and in China, guys like Stephon Marbury, J.R. Smith, Wilson Chandler, the list goes on. A lot of guys have been playing over there. In fact, it's kind of random, but I think on Israel Sports Radio we might be having a coach from one of the Chinese teams on in the next couple weeks, so that will be interesting. But Tzvi, thank you so much for joining us. I know we had a couple issues the last months trying to get you on, but it was really great to have you on. And we'd love to have you on more often now that the playoffs are getting into it. So if you're interested, we'd love to have you on in the conference finals.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, great. So have a good day out there, okay?
You too. Bye.
All right, thanks. Okay, that was Tzvi Twersky, senior editor at not IsraelSportsRadio.com. That's me, at Slam Magazine. Great guy, great guest. I think we've had him on the show now for a year or two. He's always gives great insight. Had that exclusive interview with AI. It's been a good week for a lot of Israel Sports Radio correspondents. Our Doobie Pick, who's our European basketball guy who works for Eurobasket, had an interview with LeBron James, and you can check that out on our website, on our blog section. It's a really interesting interview. LeBron James' best friend and high school teammate actually plays in Israel right now for Galil Gilboa, which is in the north, for all listeners in America who don't know that. A very good team, pretty much Israel's second best team for the last 4 or 5 years. He went to Akron, the player, and he played with LeBron he played with LeBron in high school at St. Mary's, then went on to Akron, had a great career there. 4-year starter, I believe, and all-MAC selection, and came over to Israel, has played in a lot of different countries, and has been a really great player. A lot of guys like him. We've had some guys on from Puer Gilboa Galil, Courtney Fells, and he's a great guy. Next week, we're going to have a lot of great guests. Next week, starting Tuesday, we're going to have a really well-known reporter from USA Today. She's won almost every award a woman journalist can win. Christine Brennan, she's a really amazing person. She does a lot of motivational speaking across the United States. We're going to have Cub Union from ESPN Denver, Bill Rowland from Sirius XM, Jake Appleman, who's an NBA writer, Lindsay from Sky Sports. She's going to talk soccer with us. It's great to have a British person on. Zaza from the Atlanta Hawks. He's always a funny guy, Turkish guy playing in the NBA. We have the connection on Wednesday. We're going to have the Maccabeats will be joining us for all you Jewish listeners out there. That's going to be pretty fun. The director of the Maccabeats will be joining us, David Block. Jim Williams, of course, 11, Clenari Carter. And on Thursday, we're going to have a really amazing soccer show. So if you're a soccer fan, next Thursday on the 24th, Tommy Smith, 11:30. Mark Serber, who's on Fox Sports International, will be joining us. And then just a quick preview of the following week. I won't give you the the day by day, but Del Harris, 3-time NBA coach, who played for coach of the Rockets, coached the Lakers. It's really interesting, guys. He coached the Lakers team with Kobe and Shaq, and then was fired. And the next year, Phil came in, and we know what happened there. So we're going to talk to him about all that stuff. Clenari Carter, Sandy Dover, who writes for Slam, ESPN, Yahoo Sports, will be joining us. Jim Williams again, Mike Rose. A lot of great guests, Adam Bernard. And then the month of June is going to be a great month. The VP of the Ravens, Larry Rosen, Jason Stark, that is, from ESPN.com, MLB senior writer. Mark Stein will be joining us. Dan Shulman, hopefully next month. And it's going to be a great month. Please join us. That's it for tonight, though. Please join us next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 5 p.m. local time. Good night from Jerusalem.